In this talk, I will define the musical language of the piece you just heard, the Chamber Piano Concerto, in order to show that the structure of the piece is sonata form, but with some changes to the classical model of sonata form. To begin with, we must answer what is a concerto. Arthur Hutchins wrote, when defining concerto in the Greenberg dictionary, a concerto is an instrumental work that maintains contrast between an orchestral ensemble and a smaller group or a solo instrument, or among various groups of an undivided orchestra. Then the question comes to, what is sonata form? What is on the board is a basic example of sonata form. It has an introduction and exposition, development, recapitulation, and coda. The introduction and coda are both optional. The exposition consists of two groups, a first group and a second group, which is connected by a bridge. During this section, the introduction in the first group starts in the tonic key. It then remains so until the bridge, where it modulates to another key, often the dominant key, which is the 5, which is the second key, which is the key of the second group. It then goes to the development, which is harmonically unstable, and develops ideas from the introduction and exposition. Finally, there's a recapitulation and coda. The recapitulation returns to the exposition material, both the first group and the second group. The simultaneous return of the tonic key and the recapitulation material is one of the key characteristics of sonata form. Generally, in a concerto, there is a cadenza after the second group, but before the end, or the coda. This features the soloist instrument. In this case, as is a piano concerto, the piano would have the cadenza. Finally, there ends with the optional coda. The entire recapitulation and coda remains in the tonic key. To understand the chamber piano concerto, one must first understand the musical language of it, because it does not fall under standard tonal practice. It is based, at least the introduction, theme 1, development, recapitulation, and coda, on what's called a septichord. A septichord is a collection of 7 notes. In this case, the septichord is F, G flat, G, A, B, C, and D flat. A theorist, Ford, decided to classify complex chords based on taking a starting note and then finding out how many intervals were between that and the other notes in the chord. So, starting at F, there's 1 half step between F and G flat, 2 half steps between F and G, 4 half steps between F and A, and so on and so forth, so that this chord is 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8, as you can see on the board. Ford classified this as septichord 715, which is just a classification for this particular one. There are numerous other classifications depending on the chord. However, during the chamber piano concerto, the piece is ordered. There is a root note. It is therefore an ordered septichord, and it looks like this. You can see that the notes have not changed, but it starts on a C rather than on an F. That's why the numbers on top are the same. So the septichord, the ordered septichord that is the basis of this piece, is C, D flat, F, G flat, G, A, B, and then C again. One can see the septichord being used right from the beginning of the piece. If you look at measure 2 in the piano part, you can see on the board, if you look at the top or bottom lines, you'll see that the notes are C, D flat, F, G flat, G, A, B, C, so on and so forth, following the septichord. So right at the beginning, it sets you up to understand that this is the basis of the piece. However, that is not the sole basis of this. In reality, it is triadic chords built on top of the septichord, which is the basis. If you look at the board, and then you look at the bottom notes, you will see that the notes are C, D flat, F, G flat, G, A, B, C. The same notes as the septichord. but there are triadic chords built on top of it, which do not necessarily correspond to the septichord. So the chords of this piece are C minor, D flat augmented, F minor, G flat diminished, G minor, A diminished, and B flat augmented. To hear how this affects the piece, I chose the septichord, which is rooted in the C minor triad, and then a traditional scale, the C minor, and put them side by side so you can hear the difference between the two. Let's first hear the C minor. And now the septichord. As you can hear, there are greater leaps and also more common tones in the septichord than the C minor scale. If you look at chords 2 to 3, for example, there is a third leap between the A and the C. However, between the third and the fourth chord, the top note remains constant. Only the bottom two notes change. In the C minor scale, every time there's either a half step or a whole step change, and there are no common tones between the chords in next two chords. One can hear all 7 chords, again, right at the beginning of the piece. In measures 4 through 9 in the piano, as you can see on the board, all 7 chords are used. It starts with C minor to G flat diminished in measure 4, G minor to D flat augmented in measure 5, all 4 of those chords in measure 6. Measure 7 introduces the B augmented, and then measure 8 introduces the A diminished and F minor, followed by the C minor triad. So let's hear Nikki play this short passage so you can hear how all 7 chords affect the piece. That will be the basis of the entire piece as a whole. During the piece, the chords that are in conjunction with the septichord are treated similarly to standard tonal practice. There are pitch centers with tonic chords, dominant chords, and chord progressions. The dominant chords are the same as in traditional music. The 5 and the 7 act as dominant chords, and the other ones have varying levels of importance as dominant progressions. So, for example, in the introduction, development, recapitulation, and coda, C is treated as the pitch center, with C minor as the tonic chord. This means that using the septichord, the 5, which is G minor, and the 7, which is B augmented, act as the dominant chords. The other chords are treated as dominant preparation. In general, traditional chord progressions are used with this structure in mind. So you'll see, for example, 1 going to 5 back to 1, or 1, 2, 5, 1. So in that case, it would be C minor, D augmented, G minor, C minor. To hear how this affects the piece, I again chose the septichord and C minor, and I came up with a progression 1, 3, 6, 7, 5, 1, and put them in both C minor and the septichord. You now hear the difference. Let's first hear the C minor and then the septichord. And now the septichord. With these two progressions, you can see that the septichord has significantly more common tones in them. For example, the first 3 chords all have a C at the bottom. The next 2 chords all have B flat at the bottom. That isn't nearly as much the case as in the C minor. One can see the traditional chord progressions throughout the piece, but I chose a fairly easy one to look at, just the very end, measures 220 through 225 in the entire ensemble. In this case, the piece goes from C minor to F minor to G minor to C minor. The C minor acts as the tonic, the 1. Goes to F minor, which in the septichord is the 3, which is a dominant preparation. to the G minor, which acts as the dominant chord, and then it progresses from the dominant to the tonic, G minor to C minor. So let's hear the ensemble play this progression. These types of chord progressions are throughout, and they make it sound relatively tonal, but with small changes to it that are unexpected. So now that we understand the harmonic language of the piece, let's start and look at the form. This is the form of the chamber piano concerto. It has an introduction, transition to first group, bridge, and second group, or exposition, a large development, and a recapitulation with the second group, followed by the first group, and then a coda. This already sounds like sonata form, but let's delve in deeper. The introduction and exposition. The introduction establishes C as the pitch center, with the tonic chord as C minor, and this carries through the introduction. During the transition, it becomes harmonically unstable. This is noted by the straight line, which represents stability, and harmonic instability by the wavy lines underneath the boxes. The transition goes to the first group, which is based off of a 4-note motive, which you can see underneath the first group. The first group is harmonically unstable, as signified by the wavy line. It does not have a clear pitch center, but it establishes C as the pitch center towards the end of the group, and C minor as the tonic chord. Throughout the first group, the motive shown below is developed through sequencing. There then is a bridge, which connects the first two groups. Again, this is harmonically unstable. It is substantially different rhythmically from the first group. The bridge is based off of quarter notes, half notes, and dotted half notes in the chamber ensemble, while the piano plays arpeggiated 16th notes. This is in sharp contrast to the mostly triplet rhythms of the first group. During the bridge, it modulates to F, the tonal center of the second group. In the septichord, F minor and F is the third, or the median. The second group is melodic and slow, which is in sharp contrast to the first group, which is more fast and bombastic. The harmonic structure of the second group is a hybrid between traditional tonal music and the septichord. It uses a traditional F minor scale, as you can see on the bottom notes, but it uses the chords of the septichord, so that the chords are F minor, G flat augmented, A flat minor, B flat diminished, C minor, D flat diminished, and E flat augmented. To understand how this changes the piece, I again chose the concerto's version of this concerto F minor, if you will, versus traditional F minor, so you can hear the difference. So let's first hear F minor, and then the concerto's F minor. And now the concerto F minor. As you can hear, there are greater leaps and more common tones, similarly to the first example in this concerto, in the concerto's version of F minor. If you look at the second chords, there's a minor third jump, which is unlike anything in the traditional F minor scale. But there's a common tone at the top between the second and third chords. There are two more issues to deal with the introduction and exposition. And these are the ideas of double exposition and ritornello principle. Double exposition is the twofold statement of a theme, once by the orchestra and once by the soloist. Ritornello principle is the alternation of tutti and soloist sections. In the piece, the second group does have the alternation between soloist and orchestra. The ensemble plays the melody, then the piano does, but the A theme does not. Therefore, it is not true double exposition. However, during the piece, it does alternate between large groups and small groups. So while it does not follow the